Hi guys, so today's lesson will be about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So in this lesson we will have different quadratic equations, and remember that we know that we're dealing with quadratic equations because they are on the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now what we're going to be doing different is that we're going to have an equation. So last week we covered all the methods to factor out expressions, but now the difference is that we're going to have an equation. So that means that we're going to have an equals sign and then zero. So we're going to be solving quadratic equations. At the end we are going to solve for x, so we're going to get the values for x that satisfy the conditions, that satisfy the equation. So this is going to be very easy because again we're going to have to factor out, and that's something that we already know. Okay, so for example, I'm just doing problem number 1. You have x squared plus x plus 6 equals to 0. You want to solve for x by factoring. So step 1 will be to factor. Step 1 should be to factor out. So again, in order for us to factor out number 1, we remember that we have to come up with two numbers that when you multiply them, remember, when you multiply the numbers, you need to get 6. When you add the numbers, you need to get 5. So those numbers are very easy. 3 and 2 works. 3 times 2, 6. 3 plus 2, 5. So your numbers are 3 and 2, both positive. So the answer is x plus 3 and then x plus 2 for the factorization. Now don't forget that the original equation had an equal 0. So once you have that, you're gonna get what you got, which is the x plus 3 and the x plus 2, and then equal it to 0. Don't forget about this part. You need to equal it to 0. Once you equal it to 0, so step 1 was to factor out. Now once we have equal it to 0, each piece that you factor out, like this, the x plus 3 and the x plus 2, you're gonna equal it to 0 separately. So you're gonna have x plus 3 equals to 0, and then x plus 2 equals to 0. Okay, so after you factor out, the next step is to set each factor equal to 0. And then from here, you're just gonna solve for x. From here, you get that x equals -3 because you are supposed to subtract 3 from both sides. And from here, x equals -2 because you also need to subtract 2 from both sides. So we have an answer of -3 and -2. So again, it's very easy. Step 1 is to factor out. Step 2 is to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So the answer is x equals -3 and x equals -2. That is how we're going to do these problems. Every time that they're asking you to solve by factoring, we obviously need to factor and then solve for x. Question number 2, same thing. First of all, we need to factor out x and x. Two numbers that gives you 16 and 10, it's 8 and 2. 8 times 2, 16, 8 plus 2, 10. Equal it to 0. From here, each piece equal it to 0. Each piece equal it to 0. And then solve for x. So for the first one, you subtract 8. So we get an answer. For the second one, we subtract 2. So we get an answer. Done. I'm gonna try to do a different one. So 1 and 2 are very similar, very simple. 3 is also very simple. It's the same thing. For number 4, the only thing that changes is that I have a negative right here. We don't want negatives in front of the x squared. We don't want negatives in front of the x squared. So what I will do first is to try to take it out of the equation. I'm going to try to take it out of the equation. If I'm taking out a negative, every single term changes sign. So for example, the x squared is no longer negative x squared. It's now positive. The negative x is now going to be positive x. The positive 20 is now going to be negative 20. I am changing the sign because I am taking out that negative. We didn't want the negative to be with the x squared. From here, now it becomes easy because this is now the exact same thing or very similar to questions 1, 2, and 3, where you need to factor out. Let's just not forget that you still have the negative on the front that you cannot get rid of. It's there. Now, two numbers that gives you 20, negative 20 when you multiply and positive 1 when you add them. Sorry. Negative 20 when you multiply and positive 1 when you add them. That is going to be, the numbers are going to be 5 and 4. Positive 5 and negative 4. Positive 5 and negative 4. And equal it to 0. From here, again, the steps are the same. This piece equal it to 0. This piece equal it to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. From here, x equals negative 5. So one answer is done. From here, x equals positive 4. The answer is done. And we have question 4 and question 5 is the same. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are the same process. Remember that in front of the x squared, you don't have a 1. So this is the same process. This is one of the last process that we factor out. Although, I mean, that we covered to factor out last week. This process is the one that you used when the x squared is not by itself. And what you do is that you multiply the first and the last term, and that's going to give you 48. Remember that step? I mean, or remember that method? It's one of the last methods we covered. And then from here, this becomes, remember that we kind of ignore the 2, x squared minus 19x plus 48. And then from here, you just find two numbers that gives you 48 when you multiply and negative 19 when you add them. So two numbers that gives you 48 when you multiply and negative 19 when you add them. Those numbers are negative 3 and negative 16. Negative 3 and negative 16. Don't forget that once you find the numbers, you need to divide them by the 2. By these 2 that we had at the beginning. And from here, if you cannot reduce a fraction, you will leave the denominator in front of the x, so it is 2x minus 3. And the other one you can do it because 16 over 2 is 8. Equal it to 0. So right now what I just did is nothing new. It's something that we covered last week. So from here, this is the new step. where you do 2x minus 3 equals to 0, x minus 8 equals to 0. So 2x minus 3 equals 0. X minus 8 equals 0. From here, x equals to 8. That one was easy. From that one, you need to add 3. So this is 2x equals to 3, and then you need to divide by 2. So x equals to 3 over 2. And once you are done with your x values or with your answers, you just remember that you need to box your solutions. And that's how we do these problems. Let me see if I have more. I have more here. This is an easy one. This is one of the first ones. This is the kind of the one that I just explained. Same thing here. The last two are, remember the difference of two squares. I'm going to explain 14. This is a perfect square because it can be rewritten as 2 times 2 and x times x. And 9 is the same thing as 3 times 3. Remember that method? And then we have a minus in the middle. So this is perfect to use for difference of two squares. Difference of two squares works like that. You have two parentheses. Because 4 is 2 times 2, you put 2 here. X squared is x times x, so you put the x. 9 is 3 times 3, you put the 3. And 1 with a plus and 1 with a minus. Nothing new. We learned this last week. Now we equal it to 0. This is the new part. This part you equal it to 0. That part you equal it to 0. So 2x plus 3 equals 0. 2x minus 3 equals 0. And you're going to just solve for x. And the first one, you subtract 3, divide by 2. So negative 3 over 2. In the second one, you add 3, divide by 2. So 3 halves. Done. So this is the topic of solving quadratic equations. There are a total of 14 questions. I already did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I did 5. So you only need to do 9, right? You only have to do 9. 9 questions. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have to do 9 questions. So I am going to create the assignment where you can submit those 9 answers, and that will be your assignment for today. So it will be due on Monday at 11:59 p.m. So let me know if you guys have any questions. So this is the topic again, solving quadratic equations. Thank you guys for watching.